The writing technique that is that of a travelogue, since the first person account of travelogue. So even before the word travelogue was kind of coined, people were writing about these. There also has been a very good relationship between the picaresque adventure and the travel books. Fictional depiction of travels can be found in many picaresque novels written by ancient and modern writers. The word picaro comes from Spanish, which means rogue. I'm sure many of us as students of literature have read many picaresque narratives, enjoyed the so-called rogues, escapades, and explorations. The picaresque narrative was a session of adventures. These things have been very common. I would also like to quote Cervantes' Casi Picaresque narrative, Don Quixote here, which also was an early example of this kind of genre, travel writing. In the 18th century, there was a debate regarding whether travel literature is real or imaginary. There were many people who argued that people were writing out of imagination rather than from actual experiences. Hence, this kind of debate was always welcome. Swift's work, Gulliver's Travels, has some fabulous elements.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes.
Sorry for the interruption. Actually, your voice is breaking, ma'am.
My voice is breaking. I have complete internet connection here, yeah?
Yes, ma'am. It's quite tricky.
Is it better now?
Yeah, yes, ma'am. It is fine now.
Would you like to ask the rest of them if it's lagging or something?
Yeah, ma'am, we can continue.
Okay. I was speaking about Gulliver's Travels and John Quixote. Continuing with that, I was mentioning that many people believe that there was an imaginary or imagination at play when people were writing these. Maybe partly it was true, since even 2-3 centuries ago, traveling was very difficult for people. But then, if people like Yuan Sang and the rest of them would come to India, crossing so many kinds of different mountains and managed to learn our cultures, I'm sure even then did find ways of visiting places and understanding them. Swift's work, Gulliver's Travels, had some travelers elements might come in the tradition of travelers' lies and exaggeration. Percy G. Adams noted that the travel writers of the 18th century might have written about these pseudo voyages in their books. And the question of ethics in travel writings was a very relevant question in the 18th century. Travel book, according to Cooper and Young, is any narrative characterized by a non-fiction document that would relate to a first-person account of a person's journey, and the reader supposes to have taken place in reality, while assuming or presupposing that the author, narrator, and principal's character might be one and the same, that is identical. The word travelogue happens to be an amalgamation of two words, travel and monologue. Monologue as in a person talking to himself, having inward conversation or intra-conversation as we talk to ourselves in our minds, try to find solutions, try to find ideas, concepts for the betterment of us. In any travel writing, there always occurs a constant negotiation between the self and the other. The self obviously represented by the traveler's own self, and other represented by unknown lands and obviously unknown cultures, ways of living. Travel writings or travel literatures nowadays generally called by the name of travelogues, whether they be ancient or modern. In England, the genre's early example was Gilbert White's famous work, Natural History and Antiquities of Selborne, which described his minute observations in wildlife and the natural setting of a particular area of rural England. In America, Henry David Thoreau's work, Walden, I'm sure many of us are very familiar with this. Happens to be a classical example. Adventure writing, adventure writing, or exploration writing was the name of publishing accounts of travel done by merchants and explorers of their sea voyages in different parts of the world during those times. The latest variety of travel literature, as we are seeing in our times, very obvious the travel blogs, and historians, for the most part, reveal the exotic sights of foreign lands and ancient travel writings cannot deny also happens to be a great historical. But to some extent, historians often do not to include travel writing as literature. The earliest work of writing was Herodotus' history of the Persian Wars, which described in detail the geography, history, and ethnography of the many places of Persia and Greece. The 13th century Venetian traveler and diplomat Marco Polo, whose name we should be familiar with, also took a significant role in the development of the genre of travel writing. He has been noted to the mysterious Far East. Christopher Columbus's voyage can be brought in under the same the man who took the first voyage to America and maybe his writing has developed travel writing in general. Columbus too, who came later after him, was greatly influenced by both Morgan and Marco Polo. Sir Walter Raleigh's story of the large, rich, and peaceful empire of Guyana, 1596, was also a very famous writing of the 16th century. In his work, Raleigh the expedition through Washington and Guyana in search of gold, him Queen Elizabeth's fever and a knighthood. The modern travel writings are mostly psychological journeys of the travel writers. Modern travel writers of the first quarter of the 20th century had felt a sort of world weariness and discontent with the European civilization after the First World War undertook their journeys forward. The first half of the 20th century is predominantly dominated by writers like Robert Byron, Julia Stark, Rebecca West, Robert Louis Stevenson, Evelyn Waugh, Aldous Huxley, Graham Greene, and D.H. Lawrence. These people are believed to have spent a large amount of time traveling and have some remarkable books of travel. D.H. Lawrence was a very enthusiastic travel writer throughout his life. As a point of reference, I have taken a couple of Lawrence's books for my discussion here. Right. The contemporary travel writings are also meant to be an exact reflection born out of necessity. The writers increase travel repetition in the contemporary cultural trends. The themes of their writing are guided by many variations of the understandings of life. The contemporary travel writers include Bill Bryson, Paul Thoreau, Bruce Chatwin, Peter Matthiessen, Michael Palin, Michael Meyer, and others. Thus, travel writing has always been an ancient form of writing. The element of travel writing has pervaded in almost all the ancient classics, such as Homer's Odyssey, Dante's Divine Comedy, Chaucer's The Canterbury Tales, the Bible, and so on and so forth. They also have quite a lot in respect of theme of journey. In fact, the journey movement itself serves as a very vital component of various travel writings. Journey happens to be a very important human experience, which undoubtedly takes human beings from ignorance to knowledge, from beginning to end, from darkness to night, innocence to wisdom, and from birth to death. Although many of the writings from long deal with travel or journey on the part of travel or travel writer, travel writing has undoubtedly been neglected as an important genre of literature. It's only in recent times that this topic has gained lots of importance and has garnered attention from academic scholars and Even people from cultural studies are very interested in these kind of things. The emergence of theorizing of travel writing from different perspectives also began after the Second World War because these writings describe the historical development of the imperialized world. In the 1970s, works of authors like Jacques Derrida and Frantz Fanon have led the theorists like Edward Said to give attention on the post-colonial perspectives. Sayed's epoch-making work, Orientalism, specifically exposed the Eurocentric universalism, which takes for granted both the superiority of what is European or Western and the inferiority of what is not. The term Orientalism and the other Occident came much after this. It identified a European cultural tradition of Orientalism, which is a particular and long-standing way of identifying the East as other and inferior to the West. Right. There have been many kinds of travel writing and literature, which includes themes such as interwar travel, writing as escapism, primitivist presentation of foreign cultures, psychological correlations of travel, the role of gender in travel and travel writing, explorations of the political functions of travel, studies about the function of language in travel and travel writing. The first international travel writing conference was titled Snapshots from Abroad, organized by Donald Ross, University of Minnesota in the USA in 1997. It attracted many scholars and led to the formation of the International Society for Travel Writing. Types of travel literature. I'm sure all of us, all the speakers of this FDP will be speaking about this, and I'll try to keep it to the short. We know of all the literature too. Travelogues, which are the actual reports about somebody's trip, travel stories, a realistic narration about a journey meant for a wider audience, usually with a certain literary value to it. Travel guides, the publication of practical information and advice about certain destination meant for people who might want to visit that place. I'll be beginning with the next, or rather, interconnected topic that I will be speaking about, that is identity. The formation of identity is an important aspect of human beings, and we have long since been in the quest for identity. We always worry whether we have formed the right kind of identity or whether we are faltering somewhere. The quest for identity is a very common quest amongst humans. Identity, the Latin word, means sameness, and this happens to be an essential term in understanding of this culture. It is termed as the sameness one bears only to oneself. It is a field of cultural studies too, as it's concerned with sameness, similarities, and the differences among different cultures. In cultural studies, identity is a cultural construction because the discursive sources that form the material identity formation are cultural in character. Identity has been hailed as a very important term in the field of philosophy and social sciences since the time of Aristotle. The renowned Greek philosopher Aristotle interpreted identity in respect of form and matter. Descartes, another philosopher, was also of the view that our minds interact with our bodies in some mysterious way. For David Hume, personal identity is nothing but a collection of perceptions or of the bearer. But the personal identity of an individual is negotiated when he encounters different cultures other than his own. At this point, he would definitely construct his own cultural identity. Stuart Hall is one of the most important cultural theorists who examines cultural identity in a new way. They actually interpret it in two ways. The first one being the cultural identity, which can be understood as a collective self, and the other, a metamorphic one, which is perhaps ever changing. The first one, the cultural identity, happens to be stable, and the second one, the metamorphic one, can be unstable or ever changing. Identity is one of the most essential subjects in post colonial theory. As we know, only by rewriting one's cultural identity can one culture identify its real cultural traits and skills. Professor Wang Zhuo also remarked, comparing one's own cultural identity with other cultures, identity becomes one nation's collective consciousness and centripetal force and spirit, which is the premise to reject cultural hegemony which existed between the East and the West. Therefore, it's of vital importance that we discuss the key issues of identity. Stuart Hall also mentioned that cultural identity, in the second sense, not only a process of being, but also a process of becoming. The second position of identity is built on several points of similarity and differences. So, this type of cultural identity refers to the matter of identification, the process of change and transformation. How do we understand about the relationship between identity and culture? Both these concepts are very obviously dependent. Culture is a defining feature of a person's identity, contributing to how they see themselves and the groups with which they identify with. A person's understanding of their own and others' identities develops from birth and is shaped by the values and attitudes prevalent at home and the surrounding community. Tourism can have a profound impact on cultural identity, a complex phenomenon that can be both positive and negative. On the positive side, tourism can lead to a renaissance of local cultures and traditions. It's very interesting to see how people of, rather, I must say, almost all the countries try to develop their travel and tourism, hoping that the cultures can survive. That way, especially after post colonialism, due to the hegemony of the East, hegemony of the West on the East, when we saw many cultures being kind of decimated, this kind of a dimension of the world, the tourism, has allowed the world to give rebirth to their own cultures and traditions. But for David Hume, personal identity is nothing but a collection of perceptions. A person who travels, his identity can be shaped in various ways. If I may use this example at this point of time, I'm sure that if we have people from our families or friends who visit various countries and come, we find a lot of changes in them. We also wonder whether it's a part of their attitude. But I guess the travel experience changes us, and that is where travel identity and culture will always be intertwined. Will always be intertwined, making us as individuals better people and also make our society a better one. But I'll quickly go through another concept which I've chosen. Culture. We are very proud of our culture, but when somebody asks us what do we mean by a culture, we put in so many ingredients to that one word, and very obviously very proud of the cultures. For Homi K. Baba, in his book, he mentions of the book, The Location of Culture. He defines it as to locate the question of culture in the realm of the beyond. How does stepping out of our comfort zones of culture make us better individuals? how does that have an impact on not only us as individuals, our identities, but also on our communities? Right. Omike Baba, who has taken to travel writing as an important cultural text, mentions that culture implies geographical and anthropological exploration of culture. Although this word culture has become a debatable term among the critics and scholars, culture is generally considered as a cultivation of values. The word culture has its origin from the Latin word cultura, which means to cultivate. It has been defined and interpreted by critics and scholars belonging to various fields of study, like sociologists and anthropologists too. The word culture became very popular in 1890s in the hands of Matthew Arnold and his famous book Culture and Anarchy. He compared culture with sensibility and state. Culture, culture with sensibility and taste. I'm sorry. Edward B. Tyler used the term culture in terms of society of civilization, define the word thus. He says culture or civilization takes its wide geographic sense is that complex is that complex whole which includes knowledge, belief, art, morals, law, customs, and any other capabilities and habits acquires a member of society. T.S. Eliot, in his critical work, notes the definition of culture, conceived of the three senses of culture. He interpreted culture in respect of an individual, a group, or class in society. He also took art and religion as tools to prove his point of cultural disintegration in modern society. Further, his remark, no culture can appear or develop except in religion, is an oft-quoted one. He perceived that religion and many activities were a part and parcel of primitive culture too. Identity is a very essential term in understanding. It is termed as a sameness one bears only to oneself. Right. As far as travel identity culture goes, these three will always be intertwined. And there have been many writers trying to find some kind of meaning, especially for the individual's identity. Since people noticed that through travel, people change their attitudes, people did change their way of living, it became very imperative that man began to travel and his identity by default took a steep change, not only in terms of personal the kind of contribution man gave towards society was very important, and people have looked at this. Okay. The travel writings, for the most part, are serious manifestations of cultural identity on the part of a travel writer. One really discerns that the major travel writers of Florence were produced at the time of his meeting with different cultural communities around the globe. The long nomadic life of Florence considered enough space to judge the cultures other than his own. It's very interesting to notice how people judge other cultures, and although we don't judge them for a period of time, I wouldn't be wrong if I make a comment that each of these cultures can have a bearing on ours, as well as influence the way we look at our own culture too. The long nomadic life of Florence gave him enough time to space and judge the other cultures compared to his own. He was a very energetic traveler whose pledge was to discover himself by way of looking back at the modern past. As most of the travel writings of Lawrence are inner journeys, the analysis of self is an integral issue here. The concept of the self is very has a very inherent question and very simple one too. Who am I? Here again, regarding the self, he questions as self is primarily constructed by the mind, the body, the connection between the mind and the body, which is always inquired about. Furthermore, identity is concerned with the sameness and difference in the understanding of self. It happens to be closely related to individuals' cultural construction in many respects. In fact, identity in the field of cultural studies is explained as a response to something outside the cultural periphery of any individual. In other words, identity is a concept involved in the relationship between self and the world. The formation of cultural identity is a continuous process. In fact, the development of identity is paradoxical in the sense that it's never complete, always in progress, and always constituted within and not outside at all. Identity is an understanding of self in a cultural context through which one constructs, negotiates, or defends his or her cultural position. In other words, cultural identity happens to be a never ending process of becoming constituted from the points of resemblance and distinction. The concept of identity is also integral to cultural studies in the sense that it refers to cultural descriptions of persons with which we emotionally identify and which concerns sameness and difference, the personal and the social. The question of cultural identity is central to the study of travel writings. In fact, either be it modern or ancient, people have documented different cultures from their own perspective. In this context, T.S. Lawrence's travel writings can be analyzed in the light of cultural identity. The cultural identity of an individual is fine because it's a very complex process. Now we'll have to question how the cultural identity is itself formed. In fact, cultural identity is a belongingness, group, a community very similar. I'll be trying to update these three things by a written by D.S. Lawrence, Twilight in Sardinia in particular. In this travel book, in Italy, Lawrence takes on two extremes or poles of infinite. The two monks, as and the monks, side in the minds of spirituality. They represent Lawrence's reconciliation of self and the other. The cultural identity of Lawrence is countered when he meets a spinner woman in the Lake Garda. Under the sunshine of Lake Garda, Lawrence notices a big blue check cloth spread on the parapet before him. Besides the grey wall, he sees a little grey woman who stands there, spinning with her hands. Lawrence feels a cultural clash when he sees the grey woman. And I quote him, he says, "She made me feel as if I were not in existence." Here occurs a kind of identity crisis on the part of Lawrence, because in the eyes of spinning woman, he became a non-entity. This woman wouldn't give him attention, she didn't acknowledge his presence. So he feels that in her world, his presence is not important. Moreover, Lawrence observes that the spinning woman was so busy in her own work that she almost became, again, a fragment of earth was a living stone with terraced, sun-bleached. In fact, the author becomes an outsider. It is this concept of the outsider, I guess, wherein the theme of uh, identity becomes very important, since all of us want to have a sense of belongingness. This belongingness, which can nurture our individuality, which can help us contribute better to society at large for individual progress. Hence, the concept of identity is a very important one, and writers have majorly written about this kind of things. At this point of time, when Lawrence comes across the woman spinning with her hands, a strange meeting of two cultures takes place. The spinning woman is very unconscious about the foreigner. She spontaneously of her culture. At this point, the cultural encounter takes place between the author and the spinning woman. The encounter is also what seamless that Lawrence sees and understands the meeting of two different cultures. Very obviously, the spinning woman doesn't know about the culture that Lawrence has come from, and hence, maybe he felt a little bit out of place. The strangeness or is manifested also at the meeting point of two monks who moved forwards and backwards. In fact, Lawrence's meeting with two monks is a meeting with his dark soul with their inaudible undertone. The two monks represented the neutrality of the twilight. The backward and forward march of two monks exemplifies the neutrality of the twilight. The flesh neutralizing the spirit neutralizing the flesh. Twilight is also a time when the day ends and the night begins. It is a strange moment which unites sun and darkness, day and night, spirit and senses. It's, according to Lawrence, a wonderful moment of ecstasy. On the other hand, for him, it's a melting point or a meeting point of two different cultural consciousness, the modern with the pre-modern, the self with the other. This term cultural consciousness has kind of taken center stage in the 19th century, bringing with it the ways and means to which man tries to preserve his culture in the modern day world. The self other conflict in Lawrence's Twilight of Italy resembles Lawrence's experience of seeing a snake in his poem of the same name. He's startled by a snake when he was going to get water from a drinking trough. There is a powerful consciousness of the otherness of the reptile too. Human beings and the snake share the same world and the same need for water. Yet each one inhabits a realm of awareness, unknown or unknown to the other. This kind of encounter takes place several times, but most remarkably is his meeting with the old woman who has kind of made him think about himself. The strange moment of ecstasy produced by the backward and forward facing monks who was inquired by Lawrence, like this I quote, where then is a meeting point, wherein mankind is the ecstasy of light and dark together. The supreme transcendence of the afterglow, day by day, hovering in the embrace of the coming night like two angels embracing in the heavens, like Eurydice in the arms of Orpheus, or Persephone embraced in the forward and back march of the two monks. Lawrence also found neutralizing effect produced out of the polarity of two opposites. The backward and forward march of the two monks symbolizes the magical manifestation of oneness behind opposites, and the polarity as represented here is the effect of the existence of two infinites. The oneness Lawrence seeks is found out of the conflict or polarity of the two infinites. The modern age is the age of seeking one infinite, but it is a high time, according to Lawrence, to admit the duality of self and other, the twofold infinite of the dark and the light, the senses and the mind, the soul and the spirit, the self and the non-self. In Sea and Sardinia, we see Lawrence showing his inclination towards blood consciousness of the people of Sardinia. The Sardinian region of Italy is beyond reach of civilization. They have pre-modern souls, but they are now in fear of losing their souls by the onward march of civilization. The people of Sardinia are blood-conscious people. In fact, blood is their religion. They're always guided by their blood. The young people of Sardinia are sensuous in their own way. And Lawrence has this comment, I quote him, and that also is how they are so terribly physical all over one another. They put themselves one over the other like so much melted butter over townships. They catch each other onto the chin with a tender caress of the hand. They smile with funny melting tenderness into each other's face. Never in the world have I seen such melting of tenderness as between the Sicilians on railway platforms. Unquote. In Sea and Sardinia, he gives a definite picture of how the Sardinian culture is different from his own. He sees that here humanity is externally alike. Internally, we have insufferable differences. In fact, Sardinians are natural and spontaneous people to him. They are culturally different from an English traveler like Lawrence. Furthermore, Lawrence also feels at home at the beautiful harbor of Palermo and enjoys the thrills of wanderlust. The long and slow lift of the ship at Palermo makes his journey joyful. He enjoys the motion of freedom and almost forgets his cultural consciousness and eulogizes the terrific beauty of the coast of Sicily. He enjoys the absolute liberty of his soul. Hence, Lawrence wanted to rediscover his pre-modern identity through his extensive visit to Sardinia. Although in some places he was quite disappointed by the lives of the people, he was always firm in his motto, penetrating into the very core of the Sardinian lifestyle characterized by pre-modern sensibilities. In fact, his search of a meaningful mode of life was somehow fulfilled by the firm existence of pre-modern culture around the Sardinian regions of Italy. And the people of Sardinia proved to be essential agents of discovery in the intuitive ideas of Lawrence. His soul enjoyed the thrills of pre-modern Sardinian life, but his journey, he says, was not always good. He felt lonely for being in a foreign country. And according to him, I quote again, after all, I'm no more than a single human man wandering lonely way across these years. Unquote. This loneliness is perhaps the product of cultural difference between him and the Sardinians, from which cultural identity is constructed. Right. With this, I've come to the end of my talk on travel, culture, and identity. I feel that it is still a very vast subject for us. And the more we learn about these things, the more we learn about these kind of cultural consciousness in relation to the travel that people can keep on going about in our lives. And what better way to learn about different cultures, which not only includes our own travels, our own sojourns, but also the kind of literature that we students of English literature have been lucky enough to read and learn. I'm not saying people of other streams wouldn't read these things, but I guess as literature students, we kind of study about all these things by default as a part of our curriculum. And many of us who are into research are also majorly into these kind of topics, and I guess it'll always keep coming back to us. That's it. I wish more power to all of you. Let us all learn collectively and understand the nuances of travel and Indian culture. Deepika? Deepika, are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I'm done with my talk. Yeah, I guess
Yes,
I've
ma'am.
not
Yes, ma'am.
overdone my
Now, yes, ma'am. Now the floor is open for question and answer
yeah,
session,
I've
ma'am.
not overdone my time, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. You have completed
Yeah,
within time.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. If in
Okay.
case you have questions, I'll be happy to answer whatever my knowledge permits. Fellow faculty members, I hope there was no technical issues during this talk.
Thank you, ma'am, for your valuable insights on the topic. Yes, dear participants, now the session is open for interaction.
They have to be a little louder, yeah?
Dear participants, your mics were enabled. So if you have doubts, questions, or comments, you can come up.
Before somebody asks a question, I would thank all the participants for being a part of this and being patient listeners. And I must say, although I was a little hesitant regarding speaking on a platform like this college has given me an opportunity to learn a little bit about it myself. And I hope I've done some justice by putting forth my opinion. I'm seeing lots of comments come here. Thank you. I thank all of you so much. And I expect that all of us will be a part of the 7 days FDP and we'll all be so much wiser by the end of all this. And I would like to especially thank Deepika. You've been a dear coordinating with me and clarifying all my doubts. And I'm sure I've troubled you quite a lot these couple of days. And yes, I've enjoyed the session. Thank you so much uh, for giving me this opportunity for speaking in this platform. And I must thank the organizers. Please do keep organizing such events. In the field of academics, we are so busy that there's hardly time for us to read these kind of books unless we have these kind of opportunities. I'll not be wrong telling that these last few days I've learned a lot myself. Although I've been interested in travel writing, I did learn a lot about these concepts, and I hope I've done justice to the time that the college has given me. Deepika, I must thank you once again. You've really been a dear. Thank you so much, all of you. Thank you for your wonderful comments.
Excuse me, ma'am.
I hope, yeah.
There is a question from our participant. One of our
Sorry, you're not audible.
asked, yeah, am I audible, ma'am?
Can you actually type your question?
Am I audible, ma'am?
Yeah, this is better.
Yes, there is a question from one of our participants. Where did travel writing emerge as an independent genre?
Can travel writing be an independent genre?
Shall I repeat the
Did I
question,
get the
ma'am?
question right?
Yes, ma'am. Where did travel writing emerge as an independent genre?
Right. Even before travel writing came into being, right? It has been always been there. For example, I might tell that before Picaris came, before the word Bildungsroman, we've always read about these things. The concept of the word Bildungsroman, as I said, a person's growth from maybe a young age to a gentleman or something. The terminology, but then travel writing, began even at the time of, if you remember, that entire poem speaks about traveling and their entire sojourn or journey in that epic poem. Hence, even from ancient can draw parallels. Since we have travel blogs, travel logs in these, maybe we think it's so much. But as far as English literature goes, it has always been the case. I hope I've answered your question.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you for your response.
Most welcome. You can actually put questions on the group WhatsApp group, and I'll be happy to answer to whatever extent I can. I'm also an academician, just like most of you here. It's been a pleasure being on this platform. I didn't have my own doubts regarding this, but I'm glad I did this. Relevance, yeah.
Yeah, ma'am.
Kumar asking the relevance of reading travel literature in this AI-generated genre. I guess with the AI, we all know that majority of professions are about to become. Let us see. And it's again a machine doing the work. And then the kind of emotion, the kind of human connect that somebody's writing can give, I don't see in any way AI doing it. It might write books for us. It might do our work. As it is, we are using lots of tools available on YouTube and all that for our lectures. But then I'm sure that what we can always convey will be different than what AI can convey. It might, yes, make it easier for us, but then I don't think I can simply put the concept on the AI tool, prepare 1,000 for me, not my contribution to it. I don't think it will be fair to do that. And let us hope will not give up writing. That would be one of the worst things to happen if we become very dependent on AI for our day-to-day activity. I would definitely tell that thanks to the kind of report writing that we do, the kind of n number of documents that we put in format, etc. We have learned a lot, haven't we? I'm sure the way we speak, the way we write, everything has changed thanks to all these kinds of writings that we do. All of us cannot become writers, but then I'm sure the writer in us has kind of been given an opportunity to express ourselves. And maybe, who knows, one of us might become writers later on. Not necessarily only about travel and travel logs, but of any other genre that we would want to do. So let us not keep AI as an excuse to lose in touch with the writing skills. Sir, I hope I've answered your question.
Yes, ma'am. And yeah, ma'am, we have another question.
Yes.
What is the relevance of reading travel literature in this AI era?
That's the answer. I just answered that question. I saw it pop up on my screen. Yeah.
Okay,
Mr.
okay,
Sanjay
okay.
Kumar had asked a question. I just answered that. Should I check chats here? Yes.
Yes, ma'am. It's a question from the chat. Yes, ma'am, I got it.
Right. I did. I'm looking forward to the other speakers the next 4 days at FDP. And I would like to profusely thank the college once again. I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, but then KPG College of Arts and Commerce. Thank you very much for this platform. I'm actually waiting for an opportunity of presenting a paper on this topic now. I've written about cultural alienation in the recent past. But then travel writing has been at the back of my mind. Thanks to you people, organizers, you have given me another opportunity of exploring something else, and I'm sure my next research paper would be on this.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your valuable thoughts on the topic and
Thank you
the
so much.
questions. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Good evening, everyone. As we draw the curtains on the Enlightening Conference on Travel Literature, I extend our heartfelt gratitude to each one of us for your your valuable contributions in making this event a resounding success. First and foremost, I would like to extend my deepest gratitude to today's chief guest, Mrs. K. Anuradha Ma'am, Assistant Professor, Head, Department of English, MES Institute of Management, Bangalore, for her insightful and inspiring contributions on the topic travel, identity, and culture. Once again, I thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you so much.
I extend a special thanks to all the delegates and participants for your active participation and engaging questions have truly made this conference a vibrant one. And I thank you all once again. I would also extend my heartfelt thanks to the organizing team for making this third day faculty development program a successful one. Once again, thank you all. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you so much, all of you. Meet you again tomorrow on the same platform. All the best to all of us. Thanks, Deepika, once again. Bye.
Thank you, ma'am.